All right. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mike Verinder. I'm with Katalon. I'm here today to talk about testing challenges in telecom. I'm here with Abdullah Khan and Maurice Wall, who are also fellow Katalon creators. And today we're going to just talk about telecom challenges that we've had, testing challenges that we've had, what that environment looks like, and how you can test in that environment, and the things that are that we kind of run into on a common everyday basis. All right, that's our agenda and our speakers. Can you do it again? A little bit about me. My name is Mike Verinder. I'm the Chief Community Advocate in Katalon. I've got over 20 years of experience in digital technology. I'm an expert in automation, cloud services, AI, DevOps. Currently, I lead the Katalon community. And in addition to that, I also have a number of other communities that I lead as well. Probably the membership of all those communities together are probably around 400,000 people. So my background primarily has been testing and leading test teams from scratch, and community aspects as well. Next, we have Abdullah Khan. Abdullah is a senior software development engineer and test at how do you pronounce the company name, Abdullah?
Yeah, it is actually Etisalat.
Etisalat. Okay, in the UAE.
Yeah,
Very cool.
yeah, it's Arabic, so yeah.
He's a senior software development engineer and test, and he is an outcome-driven automation engineer. He has extensive experience in quality assurance, functional automation, as well as non-functional automation. He has participated in enabling organization and implementing automation practices that have resulted in, obviously, process improvements. He's also, I'm proud to say, a Katalon creator, and so welcome, Abdullah.
Yeah, thank you, Mike.
And we also have Maurice. Maurice is a senior QA manager at Liberty Latin America. He is a strong believer in understanding and applying systems to drive efficiencies in business processes and developments. He's also specialized in business development, business analysis, SEO, web development, and a myriad of development technologies. He is also a very active Katalon creator. So welcome, Maurice, to our conversation today.
Thank you, Mike.
All right. So I wanted to have this discussion. Really, my background in telecom is since probably 1999. And I stayed in telecom personally for probably about 6 years. I was at pretty much every telecom company in the U.S., as well as a couple that are outside the U.S., like Orange, for example. But mostly mine was in the U.S. I was at some examples: Sprint long distance, AT&T long distance, Sprint wireless, AT&T wireless, Western wireless, T-Mobile, there's CenturyTel. So those are just some of the clients that I had. Nextel, if anybody remembers who Nextel is. And so I did that pretty actively for about 6 years, and I was in it every day. And my background was primarily testing, figuring out how to test those telecom systems, mostly billing system related. So I was in systems like Amdocs systems a lot. But it wasn't just limited to that. I also did some development. I ran the bill formatting uh, development aspect. That's where we take extracts from billing and format your bill, whether it be paper or as a feed to the ecom team. So that's just a little bit about my background. A lot of problems. We always had a lot of issues in testing around that. Those are big systems. Usually you're dealing with 200 plus developers in those environments, 100, 150 testers, all different types of testing, load testing, sit testing, and then obviously individual application testing as well. Abdullah, can you kind of explain the environment that you're in currently in your background?
Mm, yeah. So currently, I'm working on application which is actually we call it a unified sales portal. It is an application which is actually running on the like franchises or the retail shops of our company, and like over there, the use cases are when the customer comes and let's say he wants to buy some mobile network or like a normal SIM card or maybe a broadband connection or something like that. Then they like the sales guy over there, they're working on that application, and the environment goes like it's not just a front end, so it goes all the way back to all the backend systems. There are like um, I can recall around 7 or 6 backend systems where we need to do all the verifications, and obviously then all the data and all the connections have to reflect on multiple channels. So let's say the same is activated from the sales portal, then it should instantly be shown over the mobile application of the user if they want to sign up over there as well. Because usually now all the functions are shifted towards the digital channels like mobile applications and the website and all those things. So yeah, so it's kind of like you can say a challenging task to do the end-to-end testing of all those systems. Like um, we have to verify all those things, like verification on all the databases. If all the values are like, if I go into a little bit in detail, then we can say that all the fields are getting updated in the database, and um, like all those things, everything is synced up, and yeah, so these are the some challenges, and yeah, this is the environment currently I'm working on. Not as robust as or the experienced as you are, Mike, but like I'm still like um I'm working on like around 2.5 years from now working in telecom industry. So this is my current scope right now.
So it's interesting that I again my experience is a little dated, right? So
Yeah.
that was from '99 to probably 2006 or so
Hmm.
when
Yeah.
I was in telecom. So yeah, you heard me talk about wireline a lot. There's in the
Yeah.
U.S. wireline's
Yeah.
not as prevalent as it was back then either. And
Hmm.
while wireline was really complex, I mean, our LD plans, long distance
Yeah.
used to be
Yeah.
complex.
Yeah.
um, Wireless was a little
Hmm.
easier in some ways to manage, but also a little more challenging in some
Yeah.
ways as well. You talked about uh, your experience, and it sounds like you have a lot of retail experience.
Hmm.
You're working with the retail
Yeah.
aspects of your telecom business and
Yeah.
provisioning, maybe provisioning phone numbers and
Yeah.
things like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
So how do you test that in your modern environment? Where do you get your phone? Do you do you use something specific to generate those phone numbers with, or how does that work?
So actually, The numbers are actually like our whole data is divided into two parts. So in modern terminology, we call it them as blacklisted numbers and whitelisted numbers. So the blacklisted numbers are the ones which can be created by anyone for the testing purposes. And the whitelisted numbers are usually the numbers which are present at all in environments and at all systems. So those are the actual numbers which we can say that that are near to what we expect in the production. And the blacklisted numbers are usually what we can say as attesting numbers. Um, so the actual features can be replicated by the whitelisted numbers, and the blacklisted numbers are just for the testing purposes. So we kind of use the combination of both of them. It depends on our scenarios as well, and like for some the blacklisted won't even work because we need to do the end-to-end testing, and for some it might work. Like for example, for the billing cases, like that you mentioned that you have worked with the billing environment. So usually the billing cases it won't work with the blacklisted numbers. So we kind of use whitelisted numbers over there. So like it's a bit hard to manage all those data because now the industry is big, and like around in my QA team there are around 200 team members, manual plus automation. So there is a large data set of number that is required for each of them. And usually the data creation part is assigned to our automation team. So we are kind of creating all those things as well. And yeah, the data part itself, it's a large domain in our organization. And I think in all telecom industry, it is kind of a large domain. So it's always challenging to handle all those things like data and all those things.
So when thinking about like a retail environment
Mhm.
and you're
Yeah,
and
yeah,
you're supporting the retail establishment trying to sell units,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Do all of your retail um, in the way that I'm phrasing this as customers, but it's really our
Mhm.
business users.
Yeah.
Does everyone in the retail business user wise, do they use the same devices to facilitate this? Are they all like iPads? Are they,
Mhm.
what does that look like? Do you have franchise locations
Mhm.
that use different systems
Yes.
and
Yeah. So like we can say we can categorize them like because there are tablets as well, and there are mobile applications as well. So like at the shops that are present, we can say at the airports, they usually have a small cabins over there, so they can handle a large like a laptop they can handle, but like a PC or desktop they cannot handle. So usually they have got tablets over there. So yeah, so tablet testing is also like the browser over there should be like application should be what we can say is responsive enough to handle the tablets as well. And yeah, similarly, obviously there are around the last time I checked, there were around 300 franchises all over the country. So uh, obviously everyone have a different system. Everyone is utilizing different system. So the cross-browser testing is also important over here. And yeah, so tablet is also involved, and also the devices which are needed for the verifications of user IDs, national IDs, and the passports and the fingerprints. All those things are also used. It is kind of challenging for to automate those things as well because those are integrated with the real environment of and the data of the government level. So usually we are hitting the APIs of the government over here, the government database. So
Mhm.
um, this is also like a challenging task to automate the device related test cases because um, at the real time, the customer is like it is mandatory for customer to give the fingerprints. So like this is also a challenging task right now. And yeah, so kind of from the retail point of view, the most challenging is this like the device, how will we automate those things? So to cater that, we have created like mock services to replicate those things. Like it's kind of like it's still not 100%, but it does
Uh-huh.
some task for us.
So okay. So it sounds like you're testing with mocks. Are you actually testing with real devices as well? Like, do you have a
Yep.
lab with real devices?
Yep. So uh, currently, we have a device lab over here, and usually it is a manual task right now. Um, and mocks are used in automation, um, because automation right now it is not possible with the actual devices. We are still figuring out how to do it. So yeah, so currently this is a challenge for us right now.
Okay. Okay. I would imagine so. As demand, are you doing any performance testing with the stores as well? Right. I
Um,
would imagine you have different demand
yeah.
times, seasonality. Uh,
Yeah.
so I don't know how big Christmas is over there in the
Yeah.
UAE, but but I could imagine some different seasonality.
Yeah.
Uh, okay, all right,
Yes.
all right, cool, man. So let's go over to Maurice a little bit, and Maurice, if you could, I think your challenges are the same, but you just have more of them. it sounds like
Yeah,
you as a test manager and dealing with multiple aspects of the business. Can you just kind of explain your environment a little bit and what are
sure,
the
sure, Mike.
things that you hit on a weekly
Yeah,
basis?
yeah, sure, sure. I think the difference, the main difference here is, let's say at Liberty Latin America, we kind of cover a lot of operators, right? We have, I think, over a dozen operators, well over a dozen operators that we cater to, and try. We're all trying to get everybody to the same level of QA maturity, right? That's kind of what we're trying to get to. And as we acquire additional operators, it also makes it more interesting to, add another tool set or another software stack to the group, and then having to figure out, okay, how does this work, and how do we integrate that into the whole, make sure that everybody's using the same processes and procedures to actually do the testing, right? I mean, from the ST all the way down to, let's say, the regression testing and the, how do you say, the UAT and everything, just to make sure that all those phases and those checks and balances are done. I think um, one of the main challenges that we face is just trying to get that uniformity across the board, right? Because with each territory you speak to, you kind of have to think about, okay, they're kind of here, they're not there yet. So it's not it's not just, let's say, the complexity of the actual testing itself, but then also just trying to switch between the regions and making sure you cater to them in a way that it makes sense to guide them and get as mature as possible. That's kind of, think in a nutshell, the biggest challenge we kind of have.
Yeah, so it sounds like a lot of your challenges are process related, depending on the different business units and the maturity level of
Mhm.
those different business units. Yeah, I had a lot of that at Sabre as well, right? We would buy out a company, an integrated company, in at least twice a year, and at Sabre. Again, this isn't telecom, but at Sabre, I had 35 different test tools at that one company, and everybody would always ask, why don't you go down to one testing tool, and it sure would make sense if you just did one testing tool. Well, that's easy to say, but the truth is we had 120 different products. All the different products were at different stages. Some were sunset, some were new products, all different stages in their life cycle, and everybody had different skill sets. So there were, and then all the products had different priorities. Some products didn't have money to pay for uh, testing to go down to their one tool. They had to get out XYZ. in their product. So they had different priorities, and so those are some challenges at an enterprise level.
Indeed.
And
We were lucky enough, though, Mike, to be able to actually consolidate and have, I think, mostly everybody, especially on the QA automation side of things, we're all using Katalon. And I think we started off with a little bit with Selenium, and then we
yeah,
migrated almost everything into Katalon, and then that's kind of where we stuck at. And we did a lot of POCs with various other tools, but at the end of the day, I'm very afraid to get to where you're at, right? Which you were exactly explaining. I don't want to add a tool just to add a tool. It has to bring value. If it doesn't bring value, then I don't. And I think another complexity that comes to play here is not just the tool set. It's also, let's say, because you have different types of stacks. If you take Katalon as a tool, it can cater to a lot of stuff, but not everything. And because you're a
yep,
telecom operator, and most telecom operators, especially the old ones, exist since the time before Jesus. So they have systems that were from the time before Jesus. So those are very difficult to test. So you need very specialized tools to actually get that done. But then again, coming to it, you have to always look at where is the future, right? Where is the future? Where are we going? And what are the stacks that we're actually going to keep on the long term? And then try to play to those strengths, making sure to automate on those. And then, you'll kind of be future ready as everything migrates into the stack that you're working on. Kind of, it kind of, you kind of move away then from a lot of the functional testing to the automation testing and getting those benefits out.
yeah. So that's awesome to hear that you at least got to the point where you could consolidate into a single tool set, and not that this isn't a Catalan commercial or anything, but it's as someone that's very versed in the Selenium environment, being able to have a system that is sort of managing that framework for you and that back end for you is a big catalyst to help
Yeah.
you get out business priorities quicker,
But then,
and
Mike,
more
look at it this way, right?
consistently. Yeah.
Look at it this way also, right? You come from a Selenium background. You know what it takes to keep a team running that are Selenium experts. You know what it costs you to do that also. So
Yeah.
if you look at um, trying to make sure that all these operators eventually onboard onto something that is as user friendly as it can be, right? I mean, that's kind of where it was kind of a no-brainer for us to make that decision, right? And that's the reason why we migrated also away from Selenium. Because at the end of the day, a lot of stuff is going, the codeless direction, and I think it gives everybody the biggest chance of success in at least getting their hands dirty with automation, right?
Sure. It certainly opens up automation to a whole new. I mean, it does a lot of things, right? So
Yeah.
you're taking away the okay. You have to have a Java developer to do automation. It takes away. Everybody has a different approach to all keywords and all these different aspects of automation that you play in. You're not messing with things like, okay, we're all going to have to learn a Gherkin language or something like that. So, and there's nothing wrong with that, but it's just an added layer of complexity
Yep.
that everybody has to go through. So, yeah, there's a lot of benefit
Yep.
to it by far. You had mentioned a little bit about True Test.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about that, Maurice?
Yeah, sure. I think I want to go back a little bit just to explain a bit of the context of True Text and how it came to be something that we started to play with actually in the company. As I explained earlier, like because we have so many areas where we do testing, it is very essential to choose an area that it makes sense to use certain types of testing, right? And TrueTest being this new AI-driven machine that allows us to very easily generate not just the test cases but also the test scripts. Um, we looked towards our e-commerce and e-care team, which we call our digital team, to try and play with that tool set there, right? Because it's more or less of a beta thing, right? And what we tried to do was because we know there's such a vast amount of testing test cases actually that we need to run for regression across all the territories and all the islands that each have their own e-commerce site. We said, you know what, let's try and start with one of them. And we basically got the system installed and started playing with it and making sure that we could generate the test cases and trying to understand this tool set. And I think what I explained to you also earlier, Mike, I look at TrueTest as, let's say, the evolution as we looked at in the past. I gave you the example of we started doing our maths with, let's say, a piece of paper, right? And then yesterday I had a conversation with my dad. He said afterwards there was like this this ruler that had the special calculations that you could use to do also certain calculations that were moved away. Got to the calculator, and then you needed to learn how to use the calculator. Then we moved to the computer, and then from the computer, bit by bit, we're moving, and of course the cell phone came in, and then now we're in the full swing of the AI era, right? Where we all are trying to understand how to use this tool as best as possible to either get to the result that we need to manage the business better, right? And that's kind of how I look at TrueTest, and it's kind of like a change in paradigm, right? You have to switch your way of thinking. It's like we currently are used to, you design the software, you get it partially built, and while you're doing that, you write your test cases, you go through that process. Afterwards, you run your end-to-end test case, all that stuff is run, and then it goes into production. And then you do your regressions every time you add something. But now with TrueTest, you're kind of doing it the other way around. You're kind of generating your test cases from, let's say, the production data, which is actually what your customers are doing with, let's say, your application, which is a better insight as to what are the important test cases also, because you can measure exactly how often certain users are using certain flows on your site and all this kind of stuff. So, and the beauty of it is you could kind of use it as a cheat sheet to validate if indeed the test cases you were doing at the beginning are correct, right? And
you're right.
Apart from that, it gives you this beautiful ability to say, you know what, I need another regression set created for me right now. You could click a button, you get this overview, and not just you get the test cases, which are pretty detailed at the moment, I must say, with the last release. But you can also get, let's say, the automated test cases written for that, and you can kind of run those immediately, and then you're good to go. So basically, I could take one automation tester and have him or her do the work of many of them, right? Because basically, if I have it set up for each of the islands that we currently have, eventually it's just a question of click on the button, you got your test cases generated, you run a regression, what broke, this broke, that broke, okay, good, let's go. There's no a lot of time and effort spent into one, writing the test cases, to building the test cases, which I think one of the most labor-intensive things that we currently do in the QA sector, right?
Yeah, well, I would say it makes you rethink your SDLC a lot, right? And that's just my opinion. But, an example, right? Let's say you had small releases. And, you did a lot. I could see you doing a lot of manual testing because you're testing the one thing that's new, the new widget, right?
Yeah.
And you have to test that new widget, right?
Well,
but after that new widget hits production, then you automatically have regression testing kind of built out for you. But you're always testing that new widget for the first time. And it's weird. This industry went for 20 years. This industry had been, let's run into automation, and how do we get automated stuff quicker? And let's do automated stuff. Shift left with automation as much as we can, even the new stuff, right? And this is sort of, this opens up you rethinking your SDLC a little bit. Like, well, should I just except that I do manual testing and exploratory testing up front. And then I will have all this automation, my regression, done for me, basically, and it's rethinking a little bit of that SDLC and how that SDLC is going to play out. How have I really captured? Am I really capturing all the ways that our user is actually using our applications? Before, there was a lot of just vetting a use case to be able to do that, and hoping that our developers got it right with the product guy on how that's really going to work. But and this is a completely different. This is actually what they're doing in production. So
Exactly.
it's a neat tool, and it enables. But you have to step back and think a little bit about, well, man, how can this really affect my SDLC? And I mentioned one way, but it also changes a little bit. Well, like, what if I have multiple iterations? Like, what if I don't have a quick SDLC? What if my SDLC or my test life cycle is going to last 2 months or 3 months, and I'm going to have multiple iterations? Where do I need to do retesting of manual for those first 3 months and then wait till it hits prod? Or is TrueTest going to be able to replicate out of one testing environment and into a next testing environment? And I can retest it, because they can take, hey, what happened in test, and they can replicate that automation there for UAT, for example. So,
Exactly.
But the point is, it makes you step back and think about it, and how that evolution is going to happen. And it's a lot different than the conversations that we've had for the last 20 years, to be quite frank. Is how can I get as much automation into my initial testing?
Yeah. But then, Mike, what's your thought on actually doing automation in the SIT and the UAT phase? Do you think that is something that is worthwhile? Because in my experience right now, I don't see the benefit yet. The only place where I really see the benefit is in regression, because that's a repeat business, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, so that's a good point. So I wouldn't necessarily do automation in UAT, but I would take test steps that I could maybe generate from automated scripts and use those test steps as user stories to help my users be able to navigate, hey, this is what this user story is supposed to do, right? So maybe you could think about how to automate some of the aspects of telling them about what that new application is and what it's going to do. Not necessarily doing it, because you do want the user acceptance testing people
Exactly.
to test how they would use that application. So, but you can. I would think you can use. You could. I'm trying to think of the word to use for it. Sorry, but you can map out your stories better through an automated environment as to what those
Yep.
stories should be, instead of having to type them all up one by one, right? So,
Indeed.
yeah, there's a whole lot of interesting world that presents, and a lot of the companies use systems differently, so it's interesting to see how that plays out. So cool, man. So those are some great experiences, Maurice. Thanks for sharing. What do you see? Do you see any other innovation, I guess, in your teams, other than, obviously, we mentioned True Test is in beta. You can't get, I mean, that's pretty innovative.
Yeah,
But are
no.
you guys exploring other ways and different ways to
Well,
tackle things?
yeah, we did. We've worked on various things, Mike. Actually, let me think which one's most interesting. Well, we kind of looked at one, creating a tool to automatically be able to extract test data from our main billing systems, and then using that tool and setting it up in a way that it has a UI. You can actually download, let's say, Excel sheets with the test data that you need automatically, not needing to speak or handle with a human being to actually go back to the back end and do the queries. And because it also has an API, we were able to automate a lot of the existing user test cases that we have, where basically our Katalon script would actually just hit that API, get the test data it needs, run, and then at the end just produce a result. And you could even go as far as to say, you know what, you set it up in a way that it actually validates if certain changes in the system have actually been done. So that really helped us in that sense. I think another thing that was very nice was that we worked very much on trying to push away from modular test cases that just test specific functionalities, but more go to flow-based slash end-to-end approach, where you kind of have your test cases defined in a way where you know, okay, these are the actual flows that your users will be using. And then as you test these, if something fails, if you look back in the results, you can directly identify immediately where the impact would be. So anyone in the team, when they see a failure there, they know, hey, if we go to production, this is going to be where we're going to have issues. So there's no discussion or digging once we get the results. And I think the most interesting and innovative thing I think we did this year was we built a Microsoft chatbot called Jarvis. I think you know. Jarvis basically does a lot of stuff. You could ask it a lot of information on our process and procedures, and it could point you to the right direction. But one of the most the coolest things with Jarvis's current beta features is that you could have it run a regression for various systems and in our ecosystem. So you basically go into the chatbot and say, hey, I want to run a regression for the digital team on the Jamaica site. And it would actually run that regression. It would shoot a request into Testops, have that start running. And then you could keep asking Jarvis for updates, and it'll tell you, okay, so many has passed, so many has failed. And you can then also directly link back into the Testop site and actually see all the details as to what's going on. I think that's
pretty cool.
That's a few of the things that we've done.
That's pretty cool, man. That's awesome.
Yep.
So it would be neat if we came up with some kind of product for that as well, for Katalon.
Indeed.
There's certainly opportunity for it. So
for sure.
Abadula, man, have you guys been working? What innovative things have you guys been working on in your environment?
Yeah. So it's kind of like same as what Maurice mentioned earlier for the test data part. So we have all those APIs made to create our test data and to fetch the test data as well. And it's a set of like a lot of APIs, and we are currently utilizing them in our test scripts. And also, if anybody apart from QA team or if anyone from business side or anyone from any other team wants to take the data, they actually can hit those APIs and get the test data. We don't actually have an interface for that, but obviously it's a good learning from this session as well to work on that. And yeah, so currently this is the part which we are working on. And obviously, we are looking into some AI-based automation tools as well. So this is our next target to like go more into AI-based tools, because sometimes there are a lot of legacy applications over here which might not have a very good interface or DOM. So we are thinking of utilizing any we can say image processing based AI tools to cater them. So this is like these are the few things which are currently lined up for innovation.
What is your release schedule like over there? Are y'all releasing monthly or weekly or?
It is actually weekly, yeah. So it is actually weekly,
Okay.
and I was going through a Q&A session, Q&A window over here. and someone has asked the questions regarding do you test the configurations of new offers? So I would like to mention over here that since we have a weekly regression, so we are actually testing them as well, and because the offers fluctuate, like uh, maybe some week the offers might change, the price might change, the data might change, or so these are the things that we are also testing. We have a different application which can actually configure all those offers. We call it IN over here, and so that system is actually configure all those offers, and we have a weekly regression cycle to test them. Yeah, so lot is happening, and since we are at the sales, we are towards the sales applications. So we there are a lot of dependencies. Like even if anything changes at the back end, we have to make sure from our end that everything is working fine end to end. So even if one system is having a release, we have to test it. So this is how currently we are testing. It is actually every week we are running regressions.
Do you guys go to UAT every week?
UAT is actually based on a project. So as I mentioned, that there are different systems. So if anything is implemented at any system, it is actually a project based. So a project can vary upon its complexities. It can vary from a single week to a month maybe. So a UAT release cycle depends on the project itself and the system itself. And we have UAT, and we also have an SIT environment, but that's kind of a very low level right now. Usually the developers are utilizing it, but we do have a stable UAT environment.
Okay. All right, guys. I don't. Do you guys have anything else that you guys wanted to discuss or wanted to chat about? I think we've have given a pretty good insight into both of how you guys approach testing and the environments that you're in. It's pretty interesting and neat to see. We won't go into all the stuff that I had to do way back in my telecom days. It was pretty nuts. So that's probably a 2-hour discussion in of itself. So I'll leave that for another day. But Han, do we have any other? I think we only had one question, and we went through that question already. So I guess that's about it. Thank you guys for hanging out today and chatting. I know it was a quick chat. And Maurice, thank you again. Maurice, for those that didn't know, Maurice is dealing with a power outage on his island. And he was still able to carry through. So thank you very much, sir. All right, guys. Thanks for joining, and I'll see you next time. All right.